staring into the light.
Don't go towards the light.
It's drawing me in closer and closer to my demise.
Yeah. However, yeah, well, that's where I want those cube dice people to go.
So explain this again. There's a clear division in the household between crushed ice people and cube dice.
There's two factions of people in the house.
Factions of Phalans.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
Those who like crushed ice and those that are wrong. I mean, that like
they're not here. They're not represented on
Exactly.
this. You could say whatever you want, man. They don't even listen.
They are the cubed ice people who never switch back over when they're getting their heathenist cubed ice. They never put it back to the crushed ice, and
that's a difficult task for you to remember to do at your old age. So you need them to do it for you.
You know, in the middle of the night, you're not paying attention. I don't turn the lights on. I just do everything by touch.
Yeah. Me too. Yeah.
So I like
that has been a mistake so many times that I've still not learned.
It is. Well, what's even more of a mistake is those cubed ice heathens who don't pay attention, and a cube has fallen on the floor. It is melted.
Yeah, they make a pool.
And then I step in it in my socks. And what is the worst feeling in the world? Other than being shot, it would be.
I'm gonna throw this out there that this is probably still not the worst, because to me the worst is stepping in a warm pile of dog crap, which I don't have a dog for that very reason.
Okay. Well, so how do you know?
Happened to me in the past. It has happened in the past.
It is. That's got to be one of the most disgusting things. Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, it really kind of sucks to have wet socks. Usually it's with like, why do you have my glass? There's like few lines of territory that I draw. One of them is like, my glass, my mug here. And then a couple of other ones that are like, is like,
they're yours and yours alone.
So the coffee mug, which I don't have around me, but the coffee mug is by Auburn alumni coffee mug. And anytime somebody else is using it, I'm like, did you go to Auburn?
Did you earn that mug?
Exactly. Did you earn that mug? No, you didn't. Can I have my mug back, please?
So who's on each side of the faction line here? I have a feeling I know the answer, but and the reason I think I know the answer is because I think I also know why you don't pour your cup of water onto said offender. That might come back to hurt you.
The heathens are my oldest son and my wife.
There it is right there.
Exactly. So there's why I don't pour, water on people's heads.
I mean, with your son, you could definitely get away with that. He's not the big one who's in northern Michigan right now who can wrestle you to the ground and take you out in a moment.
Exactly.
But not that he's not capable, but he's also not that kind of a.
He's not that kind of a person.
He's just not that kind of a person.
Exactly. So he's just the kind of person who always takes my Auburn alumni mug.
Oh, I see. Okay, yeah. So the heathen, it goes deeper than ice cubes.
Exactly.
I see.
Well, no, but so he's using my coffee mug, defiling my coffee mug with cubed ice water.
Makes no sense.
Well, he doesn't drink coffee, so.
I know somebody, and they might listen to this podcast still, but they would walk around the office with a coffee mug full of hot water. Just hot water. Because here's the reasoning. The reasoning was they got off caffeine. They stopped drinking coffee. They didn't want any caffeine. And so the warm cup of water still gave them the feeling like they were participating in the coffee culture of architecture, but they weren't getting the side effects of said coffee, especially in the afternoon where you just can't sleep anymore once you reach a certain age, right? So you stop drinking coffee in the afternoon, at least caffeinated coffee.
I swear
a hot cup of water.
that I have never, and I don't know why, but I have never had that issue where
whatever, dude. You don't sleep. It's not that you can't sleep because of coffee. It's that you can't sleep at all. I know this.
Okay, fine.
I can't believe you were about to say, like, it's not abnormal for me. It's like, what do you sleep like 3 hours a day. That's all.
Okay. And that 3 hours of sleep is not related in any way, shape, or form to
Right.
caffeine.
Yeah. I can imagine.
Actually, I will say this, that I have cut myself off where I literally only drink 2 cups of coffee. It's with my breakfast and kind of not pre-lunch are the 2 cups.
Mhm.
And then once I'm done with that,
Then you're done.
I will pour that second cup, and no matter how much is left in the craft, I will pour it out.
Wow.
I will force myself to avoid.
You are done.
Exactly.
I have 1 cup of coffee that is 2 cups big in the morning.
Okay,
That's
there you go.
my math.
Well, I use the excuse that I need to like walk downstairs and like get away from the desk, and so I use that.
Yeah,
as
that's a good excuse.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Here's
Definitely.
my exercise entails walking down to get coffee, walking back up to sit at desk, walking back down to get coffee, walking back
Your
up
morning
to sit.
calisthenics routine. Yeah.
There you go.
Get your steps in, get your flights in, all in one. Yeah, and the coffee. So it's that's the good part of life right there. What you just described is the good life, is that in between the kitchen and the desk.
There you go. I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah, the good life. Well, you got some good news this week, right? From NCARB. I want to talk about that.
Oh, yes. In fact,
You were thrilled to get this email.
Not only did I get that email and then share it with you, and you're like, wait, what? I got a follow-up email that says, remember, we're waiving your fees to
keep that dopamine going.
So
it was a follow-up email.
So one of the things that a lot of people, so I don't know if this is everybody or whatever. So our firm participates in paying for our AIA dues. It's a good tool for, good incentive for, registered architects. And then we don't have to worry about the $900 worth of fees.
$800 and something we just complained about on a recent
Exactly. So then we have, we usually have right after you get a license, you've got your free, year or so of NCARB. And so that carries on. And I renewed it a few times.
Well, you've been paying for that already, right?
Sure,
just to maintain your NCARB record while you're going through your licensing process.
Right.
Because then once you get your license, they send that off to your state, which is, from what I understand, a very difficult and time-consuming, belabored operation, right? To actually just send that file from one computer to another. Yeah. Right.
And so, for a few years after registration, I decided to go ahead and keep it up. So I was NCARB for a while. And then it got to the point where it's like, wait, I'm paying for this out of pocket. I'm paying for a couple of licenses out of pocket. The only thing I'm not really paying for is my AIA fees. So I'm looking to cut my own expenses.
Yeah, because there are so many. It is expensive to maintain all of these credentials.
Yeah,
and especially if you don't immediately see the benefit of the credential.
Exactly.
Because do you know how much is it to maintain your NCARB
per year
thing every year?
Per year is
like $250 or
$250 a year.
Yeah,
and
then you can say NCARB after your name.
So
like Cormac Phelan, AIA, comma, NCARB, comma, Lead AP, comma, CDT, comma, all the
basically it's
things.
Cormac Phelan alphabet soup.
Right.
And
well, you're a professional.
No, yeah,
I expect
it's just like
no less.
And Monsieur in front of it.
Right.
But so obviously, and don't forget that, because I have a Florida license, I also have to pay for what's called an enhanced code or advanced code courses of CEUs. So because Florida requires essentially certification to understand the Florida building code, the nuances of the Florida building code, hurricane stuff, and all of the product approval things and everything else. So they require you to take some courses, and those courses are not free. There is not a single, I've looked and scoured, for those 2 hours,
As we all
for
do.
those 2 hours, I have to pay a minimum of $150 for it.
So
which
there
is
was there
twice.
any additional testing you had to do for a Florida license?
No, it's
Okay.
all in the CEUs later.
Okay.
So which is twice the one class or the one CEU or the 2 hours of CEU that I need to maintain my Florida license. That one CEU is twice as much as it costs to actually pay for the Florida license.
Oh gosh.
Gotta love it.
Well, I mean, you could be in California and just have to do it all.
True.
You've got to have the 5 ZNEs and you've got to have the 5 ADAs and
I'm sure it's additional costs.
And we had the extra test and all that stuff.
So I let it lapse, and if I were to renew, I would have to pay $250 plus, let's just call it shy of $1,300. And so
before we move on,
yes.
Before you get into the NCARB stuff again, I just want to point out that your Florida license is completely useless, and we just need to make sure everybody knows that right now.
Well, thank you.
You're not using it at all.
Well, don't worry. Don't forget that I, also have a Maryland license, and I am now living in Michigan. So,
right.
I'm sorry, you can say that twice.
No, you can say it right back to me because I have a California license that my goal is to not use it either.
Yeah, and so back to the NCARB stuff. For you to get licensed in Oregon, do you have to be NCARB certified?
Yes, you do.
Dave.
And so you didn't need that to get your Maryland license because you got your Florida license first.
Got my Florida license first. And so the reciprocity process in Maryland was essentially providing all of my college transcripts, 3 letters of reference, my Florida license, all of my AXP or whatever it was at the time.
I'm just laughing because you keep all this stuff on hand, right? You keep some extra transcripts laying
So
around.
the good thing is that even though I didn't need NCARB, because what was okay, so here's the funny sick joke of that is the cost to not
to get transcripts
to get everything pulled together was like $750 or something like that for me to go through the process of being NCARB certified for my Maryland license. It only took me sending off certified copies of different things, certified copy of my Florida license, certified copy of my transcripts, and then just 3 letters of reference. That's all I needed to then send it off to the state of Maryland, and the state of Maryland then approved my licensure and then, gave me reciprocity.
This is professional theater. Let's be totally honest here. Like there are these things that are, it's very important and it's like a checkbox on a computer screen in a database. And that is that then there's all of these other hoops that you have to jump through as a professional to maintain professionality.
So in depending on how each state provides issues out the professional licensure, they either have adopted NCARB as an easier path as a lighter load for them, so that they don't have to hire people to certify the licensures. They have somebody. They've outsourced it.
They have a professional agreement with an outsourcing company called NCARB.
Exactly. Yeah. But thankfully, there are states that still, we've got, a professional licensing board anyway, and we'll go ahead and throw architecture as part of that whole process. And, if you want to get a license, you basically have to have your transcripts, your, certification of your other licenses, show that it's all in good standing, and then your 3 letters of recommendation, and that's it. And so I haven't really looked into Michigan to find out whether or not what I need to do with Michigan. But I've also realized, though, that for professional development, I actually like a lot of the CEUs that are provided by NCARB.
Okay. Yeah. Well, first of all, you lost me at I like CEUs because I know you do like CEUs,
Well,
and I think that's so funny. And but there's this, you do this, you do it quite
yeah,
often. You obviously being an architect is a career of lifelong learning. We always
yeah.
have to be learning new things. So I mean, kudos to you that that's something you like, because for most of us, it's scrambling at the end of our license year to get that stuff crammed in so we can send them the money and continue the license.
So I will say that I normally always have probably twice as many
You
CEUs
probably have more.
than I need
Yeah.
to.
Right.
And full disclosure, the only CEU that I'm scrambling for is the one that I actually have to pay for. So it was funny as
That you don't need. That you don't need. Let
the
me just
the
say
the
that.
last time I did my Florida renewal, I had 48 HSWs,
Oh man.
and
What's the requirement?
um
18 or 12 or
18, I think, or
yeah.
something.
Or that's for AIA.
Well,
That's just like AI. Yeah.
24 in a 2-year period for Florida.
Oh wow.
And
That's a lot.
and 2 of those has to be the advanced codes. And so basically I had 48, but only 22 of them really mattered. And the remainder, because none of them were advanced code, didn't really matter.
Yeah, you can't roll them
So
over either.
so if you
No rollover plan on this
so if
on
you
this
look
one.
at them, because I had to get it done December whatever, or December 31st. If you look at when I took the paid for out of pocket, what my last required CEU, it was December 20th.
Yeah.
So, uh,
Let's take a step back here for a moment and just like, what is the purpose of NCARB for licensure for those people who don't? Maybe there's students listening and they're like, and what? Like, what is NCARB? So it's the National
National
Council,
of
right?
Accreditation,
NCARB, accreditation or registered. I don't even know what it is.
registration board.
National.
Should I?
We should cut that whole piece out. Yeah. National Council of Architects Registration Board is what I think it is.
Yes.
Now
National
that here we
Council,
are. Now that I
National Council
okay,
of
council.
Architectural Registration Boards.
Right. So they're the ones who actually provide all of the ARE, architect registration exam,
Yes.
and for all the candidates across every state, right? And it's the same test for everybody. And then certain states have their own test, which is not provided by NCARB, right? So that's a separate
Yeah.
thing. That's a state thing. But then NCARB is basically keeping track of where you went to school, when you graduated, your degree, that it was accredited, right? And then you have the exams that they're keeping track of, pass, fail, making sure that you
Right.
do it within the time period, which has now been abolished, kind of asterisk. And then they have this quote unquote record of you and your accomplishments through this. And then they transfer that to your state to verify, if the state requires them to verify that you've done all the things,
Mhm.
right? So that you can actually get your registration or license, depending on the state that you're in. And so what you're saying is it was $250 a year to maintain your NCARB record, which also allows you to be registered with NCARB and put NCARB after your name, as if anybody knows what that stands for. They don't,
Right.
but a lot of people do use that in lieu of or in addition to AIA after their name, which
But
you can then say, yep, it means I'm an architect, right?
then the question is does anybody else know what AIA means?
And well, it has, I think it does, but not for everybody.
Sure.
Right? So there are a lot of people who know that AIA means architect, but they also think that that's all that it means.
Right.
They don't think it means that you're part of a national organized group on behalf of all architects in, who are part of their group in the United States.
Organized.
Yeah. Or Cormac's doing bunny ears air quotes on the YouTube right now.
Exactly.
organization, professional organization. So
Not to be
there's,
confused with the union.
I shouldn't say organization, I should say association, right?
Right.
It is the American Institute of Architects. It is a professional association.
It definitely certifies that we're institutionalized.
Yeah, exactly.
Or we should be institutionalized, something like that.
So NCARB does not require any coursework or anything for you to maintain. They just require the $250. Whereas AIA, you have to pay $800 and something. The majority of that goes to national, some of that goes to state, some of it goes to local, and you have CEs that you have to do to maintain your AIA. That's just part of the requirement, and that they track that through their website. So there's a whole lot going on here, and it is totally confusing, I think, for most people who are not actively doing it.
Right.
But if you don't continue your NCARB dues and record, then what happens is like I just went through this process where I moved from California to Oregon. Oregon says, just send us your NCARB record. You go back to NCARB and they say, you owe us $1,200 because you haven't maintained your record.
Well, that's usually...
And so the email... Go ahead.
So, no, I was going to say that's usually like $1,200 plus the then, next year's
$250 for the following
exactly
year. And there's some maximum number. There's a formula to it. So it's not like it'll continue on forever. If you didn't maintain your NCARB record for 20 years, there's like a maximum number in there that it would cap out at.
Yeah.
But what happened was they sent an email to you that said, we're waiving all of those back fees. Just re-up for another year, $250, and you're back in.
So what they did was so I'm still able to log in to my NCARB records and all this other stuff.
Right.
Because I am a reviewer of a couple of people's hours. I certify their hours and all that other stuff.
And they track all that in there too for AXP.
Yeah.
So everybody who is trying to get licensed, or in the process, I should say, as a candidate for licensure or registration, they actually have a certain number of hours that they have to show that they did in all these different categories for experience hours in construction administration and project management and all these different categories.
Yeah.
And for each piece of that, they could name one or two or more architects who will sign off on those hours for them. And all of that is also tracked through NCARB, right? So because that's an additional requirement that you have to meet to get your license. Like you have to pass all the AREs and have a certain number of hours in each one of these categories that's been signed off by a licensed architect, or there's a few different options there, but all of that is tracked in your NCARB record, which they are quote unquote maintaining. Again, it's just a file on a database.
I got something interesting here.
What's that?
Okay, so
you're live. So you're looking at the site live. I'm
looking at like state requirements for, because we were talking about do you need to have an NCARB certification for your licensure in Oregon?
For reciprocity.
Yeah. So here's something interesting, and I practice requirements is a selected tab that you can do. An NCARB certificate holder is allowed to offer their services without being registered in this jurisdiction, contingent that they are registered before those services are performed. So and funny enough, you're in one of those states. So if you are NCARB certified, you can render architectural services.
That actually says architectural
services in the state of Oregon, if you are NCARB certified, even if you are not an Oregon state licensed architect.
Interesting. I've never heard of that before.
I've never heard of that before either. I'm just completely, so they've got basically a couple of categories: initial registration, reciprocal, let me try this in English, reciprocal registration, registration renewal, and practice requirements. And interestingly enough, there's a handful, not a lot. 1, 2, 3, 14.
This is more than a handful.
19 states that allow that requirement. What's also interesting is Maryland is one of those states that
You didn't know.
that I didn't need an actual Maryland license to practice architecture in Maryland.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Or you could just work at a firm where another architect signs the drawings and you don't have to have it at all.
I think I could be wrong, that I do already.
Yeah.
So it's actually, it's interesting because, when you're doing reciprocal, so there are, another handful, and I'm not going to count them, but there are another handful that do require NCARB as basically the governing jurisdiction for reciprocity. Michigan is not one of those states that requires it.
Yeah. So if you don't need an NCARB record that's current, what are your options in Michigan? Or what are the requirements, I should say, in Michigan?
I'm going to go out on a limb and say it's the same thing that I use for it. It's because it's interesting. It's because like Maryland either is now or it shows that you can practice there, but you don't need NCARB certification for reciprocity. But if you have an NCARB certification, you can practice architecture.
Yeah.
It is
without
weird.
a Maryland license.
It's so very weird.
That is weird. Mm-hmm.
So I'm assuming very much the similar option that I had in Maryland, where I didn't use NCARB for my certification. I can just basically provide a bunch of information and, official transcripts, have my official licensure of the other states and all of that other stuff transferred over.
And your letters of recommendation.
And my letters of recommendation.
That are written by ChatGPT.
Exactly. Coming back to that, I've been quite enamored with because truth be told, when we had our conversation about ChatGPT and AI and all that other stuff that people will hopefully have already listened to and maybe not, I was coming from, this is what I hear other people saying about AI kind of, position. Mm-hmm. And now that I'm actually like dipping my toe into AI, I'm like, whoa, really? This is awesome.
It's pretty powerful stuff. Yeah. I mean, it's actually scary powerful stuff.
Yeah.
So in Oregon now, I have the opportunity, Cormac, because guess what? I got the email too.
Did you finally get the email?
It was actually in my inbox. I just couldn't find it.
Okay.
So you texted me and you're like, no way. Wow, this is awesome. I can now. And I was like, oh, I need that. I didn't get that email. I was like, I had the FOMO. I was missing out. And so I now have found the email in my inbox, and it was actually a different amount for me. It was
good.
What was yours? I think it was $12.50 for me.
Mine was basically $12.50. Yeah.
Okay. So, I mean, and that, I think I did the math, and it was like $1,100 or $1,150 that I would have had to spend. So maybe that is, like you were saying, plus another $250 for the next year. And so this is saving me a lot of money if I choose to get licensed in Oregon, which I don't need to, I don't think, right? But I'm definitely not letting my California license lapse, because in California you have to take the extra exam. And so if I let that license lapse and I ever do need it in California again, guess what? I got to do that again. You have to
take the exam again.
I don't want to do that. Yep.
Yeah. So it's interesting. So I got 3 emails from NCARB all talking about the waiving of the fees. The first one was a kind of a direct result of a survey that I took, basically saying, we heard your feedback that reestablishing your NCARB record has become very costly. So we are waiving your reactivation fees for the next 60 days. Now I thought I was special because I had taken a survey
for a little bit.
And so for at least a week I was special. And then they emailed out that exact email that you got that a week later. Not a week later, 4 days later. That basically said, we're going to waive it for everybody, which is great, because there's this interesting push for NCARB from everything that I've been reading to realign themselves as a competitor to AIA when it comes to providing a lot of professional services for the architect. And by providing all of these tracking, by providing the, reciprocity, AIA doesn't do reciprocity. AIA doesn't do licensure. You're only allowed to say, hey, I'm AIA if you're licensed.
And if you pay the money. Yeah.
Exactly.
I'm going to do the CEs.
I mean,
right.
Really, it comes down to it. We all could literally just not call ourselves AIA or NCARB and just call ourselves RAs. And RA makes far more sense because it's registered architect instead, in just like medical doctor or dental doctor. What is it? DDS or something like that. Right. Yeah. I mean, all of these, or Esquire, if we want to get pinky fancy on being a lawyer. But I mean, it's interesting that we do all of these hoops to have the alphabet soup behind our name, when really, once we get licensure, we already have at least 2 letters behind our name, and that's RA.
Yeah, and a lot of people do that. Yeah. I have been seeing a lot more NCARB after people's names lately, and I'm not sure why I'm seeing
because
them.
They waive their fees.
Well, yeah, but that is
no,
too recent.
Yeah, I'm kidding.
And it is interesting because I think all of these organizations are looking for ways to raise their revenue. And at the same time, we're all over here saying everything costs more money. Everything. Yeah. Ice cubes cost more money, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's incredible right now. And they're also looking for ways to bring in revenue. It's no secret, and we've talked about it on the show before, that the administration of NCARB makes a lot of money, right?
Yeah.
And so it's kind of, I think there are a lot of people who are like, oh, really? You waived the fees, and all they're doing is turning you into a customer who's ghosting them back into a customer again, right? Without the penalties.
Yeah.
And so I think a lot of people are interested in it, but at the same time, it's like, this is $250 that you could use for what? And so NCARB has to win that competition of like, who gets the $250 at this point. So I think for me, it's more about like, is this something I actually need to do to achieve the goal that is at hand? Or is this something that I can continue to just put off and never actually have to use?
But NCARB, here's a plus if you're interested. NCARB has, as this article says, celebrate a reciprocity agreement between the U.S. and the U.K. So they've helped streamline the process if you ever want to become a registered architect in the U.K. So there you go.
Yeah.
If you would like to put more initials behind your name, you could be a RIBA.
You could be well. So I could see that being useful for a very small fraction of people. Maybe it's bigger than I think. But you also said that you thought their continuing education was a better offering than others that you've seen.
Now,
so is that included in your registration?
It is.
Do you have to pay additional for that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Now I will say this. Now, I mean, again, this weird little addiction of CEUs that I have.
Very odd.
I will say that there are a lot of really good architectural publications that offer their own CEUs that are really good CEUs. They're very timely to the profession. They basically host with a lot of like, tech people and things like that. And one of my favorites is actually not a sponsor, the Architects newspaper. And they have a really good set of CEUs, and some of them are just interesting. They're good lectures. They talk about, like, the most recent one I did was on mass timber, and it was interesting. So I'm just really interested in this mass timber movement and how it's being used, and starting to see high rises or mid rises at least being made out of mass timber. And so that to me is interesting, weirdly enough, but that still is interesting to me. And so, I don't know how many different emails that I have subscribed to the Architects newspaper. I get basically at least 3 announcements of the same CEUs every day, which
Mm-hmm.
of course is fun. It's either that or I really need to like figure out like how to unsubscribe from everyone except for like one.
It's not that hard. There's a little button at the link at the bottom of the emails.
Yeah.
Just click
Yeah.
it. It's kind
It's
of like
true.
how hard it is for NCARB to send that record over to your state.
Makes
It's about that hard.
that hard to click a button. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what I'm going to do?
Riveting content.
You know what
Here,
I'm going to
Cormac.
do?
Riveting
I'm
content.
going to see.
What?
Now, so here's another like dumb, stupid, interesting thing from me is, because we're doing international work and I'm doing work in Saudi Arabia right now. Everything that, like all of the standards that they go by in Saudi Arabia are RIBA standards. And,
Gonna look into it, huh?
so, it would be interesting to understand like the whole process behind like how it's
Did you see see the movement
yeah,
I'm making
yeah.
here?
I will never sign and seal a document overseas. It's like those paper soldiers that just collect awards and all that other stuff. And I'll just have all of my I'll have like
Yeah.
like all the bling that shows you are certified in Florida and
Yep.
Maryland and Michigan and the UK.
It's not bling, Cormac. It's flair. How many pieces
That's
of
right,
flair
flair.
are you?
I don't have enough flair because
You need more flair.
don't
You need at least 3 pieces of flair.
don't you need a minimum of 10?
It might be a more, which is less than a handful, according to you.
That's true.
A handful equals 19. It's very specific. Well, good news for everybody out there who's let their NCARB record lapse for the last decade plus. You can re-up for $250, and then you can get your reciprocity and allows you to get licensed in another state should you need that. And this is the second piece of good news from NCARB this year, and
Yeah.
we're recording right now on May the 4th. Be with you, and the whole NCARB with good news is great news. I think that's good for the profession. Doing things that are working towards a stronger, more positive profession is exactly what we need to see a lot more of.
And that first piece of good news that we talked about a few weeks ago, about the abolishment of the Royal clock. I talked to a friend of mine who kind of our age, been struggling with the time and everything else. And he'd been hit a couple of times with the rolling clock. And good news is that I believe he's only, once they reestablish and reinstitute the other tests that he lost, he's got 1 test left. And that's good. I mean,
It's a good because it's a big weight.
Yeah. Because he just like, people know the longer you get into your career, honestly, the harder and harder it gets to be able to find the time to sit down and carve out just time to study, because you've got so many other like growing responsibilities in your career and your life and everything else. And I'm not saying that younger architects don't have that. It's just they're doing it right by doing it early and getting it out of the way. I
totally agree.
I actually talked to somebody at our firm who just got licensed a couple of months ago. And I was just like, hey, I haven't, talked to you in a while. So how does it feel to have that burden, the tests behind you? And he's like, oh man, I don't know what to do with myself. He goes, it's like, I'm always working and I'm always studying. And now I don't have to study. So I don't know what to do with my time. I'm like,
I don't know what to do.
Like, I don't know what to do with my time. I'm like, live life.
Just
live
seriously.
life.
Isn't that the real story of being an architect? You train so hard, like school is all consuming and it basically trains you to be like that to constantly fill your time. I mean, it could be like you with the CEUs. It could be studying for your AREs. It could be all these things that you just, you forget actually how to, architects forget how to live because architecture is all consuming. So it's pretty appropriate that he said that.
Maybe the weirdness that I have with CEUs stems from what felt like decades of studying for the AREs, rolling clock and everything else. It was decades, really.
And the overworking.
And the
all the
overworking and
things.
everything else that is just like,
This is normal.
something doesn't feel right. I need to keep studying something. Oh,
Yeah.
let me study the latest technology or materials or whatever.
I suffer from this in my own way as well. So I can't judge.
I don't know how many times I could learn roughly the same thing about rain screens, but I do.
But you shall continue.
But I shall continue.
The CEs will continue until what?
Exactly. I know totally where you're going with that.
The reference.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is it the beatings will continue until morale improves?
Exactly.
Yeah. The meetings will continue until morale improves.
Yep.
All right. Well, until next time, good news. We'll share it.
This is the way.
This is the way.